Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane. I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library in Massachusetts, and I am so excited. I can't even tell you to be here with Alka Joshi, one of my favorite authors. And when she said yes to doing this, I mean, I think I almost fell off my chair. Everybody in the library knows it. It's been quite a ride waiting for this to happen, but I'm very, very excited for tonight. And I'm very thankful for Alka for doing this. So before we get started, though, I just want to say a couple things. One is I'd like to thank the Friends of the Ashland Public Library for supporting all of our programming. We couldn't do this fun stuff without them. I'd also like to thank Alka for letting us share this program with other local libraries because you all know this. When libraries work together, we make magic. And then finally, I'd like to say that you can buy signed books by Alka from Aesop's Fable, our very favorite indie bookstore local to us. And I will put a link for that in the chat, and I will certainly send it out to everybody after the program as well. So as I said, Alka Joshi. Oh, wait, I forgot one more thing. If you have questions, put them in the Q&A. I will moderate them after Alka talks to you about all of her exciting books and publishing and maybe some new book stuff. So no spoilers, no spoilers. But yeah, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A and I will moderate them to Alka. And if you don't have them, I have plenty. So don't worry about it. Just enjoy. So as I said, Alka Joshi, I have been in touch with her or her people for like 2 years. And every time I heard from her, I was just like, oh my God, I'm talking to Alka Joshi. It was really quite embarrassing, Alka. I'm very sorry. So yeah. Um, but as I said, Alka is going to be talking for a few, like maybe 25 minutes about things that she would like to say, and then we will go into Q&A. So I would like to tell you a little bit about her. She's an internationally best-selling author of the Jaipur Trilogy, The Henna Artist, The Secret Keeper of Jaipur, and The Perfumist of Paris. Her debut novel, The Henna Artist, immediately became a New York Times bestseller, a Reese Witherspoon pick, and was long listed for the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize. It's been translated into 29 languages and is currently in development at Netflix as a TV series. I'm so excited for that. In 2023, Forbes selected Alka as one of the 50 over 50 women empowering other women. She was born in India and came to the US with her family at the age of 9. She has a BA from Stanford University and an MFA from California College of Arts, and she lives in California. So she's not having the cold wave we're having here. Alka, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. That is the most brilliant introduction. Thank you so much, Mina. I'm delighted to be here. And I can see that we've got people from Memphis, Baltimore, Cleveland, Virginia. Oh my gosh, everywhere. I
Yeah.
love it. I love this. This is
I've
so
been I've been getting emails from people saying how excited they are that you are going to be speaking with us. So yeah, I feel like a hero. Thank you so much for that. So I'm going to go
Oh,
off
and
screen.
Scotland. Did you see this?
Yes. Oh my
Scotland.
goodness.
This is so great. Edgertown, Massachusetts, and from Pueblo, Colorado, where I was a couple of months ago.
Wow.
Bristol, Rhode Island. I love it.
It's awesome. So as I said, I'm going to go off screen and the floor is yours. I will come back for the Q&A in about 25 minutes. Alka, I cannot wait to hear every word you say because I can't wait to read every word you ever write.
Thank you so much. Okay, everybody, here we go. So I am not a writer by childhood. I had never intended to become a writer. This is a totally new thing for me, except for the fact that I wanted to be in the creative field. I just didn't know how to get there. And my parents, who would always encourage me with all my drawing and my illustration and my painting, always said to me, you're going to have to figure out some way to make a living at this creative stuff that you like to do. Of course, nobody in my family, my Indian family, had ever done anything like this before. And so, everybody's an engineer or a doctor or whatever. And I think that the best advice I received from them was you can figure out a way to do this as long as you can make your rent payments, your mortgage payments, whatever. So I gravitated towards advertising, and advertising provided for me a great income, but also at the same time, I got to create advertising for commercials, for TV, for ad campaigns, for radio, for magazine campaigns and so on. So I was constantly writing tiny little stories that lasted a minute or half a minute or so, but I didn't realize that that's really what I was doing. Well, by the time 2008 rolled around, I was running my own ad agency, and the times were very lean because in 2008 there was a huge recession. And the recession always for me meant that many of my clients were going to take away some of their projects or they were going to put them on hold or whatever. And so I thought, okay, well, I will twiddle my thumbs for about 2 years while the economy recovers. What can I do with my time? My husband had always said, I think that you can write fiction. I know you can write fiction. You do it all the time for work, for advertising anyway. But I think you could write stories because you're always telling me stories about India, and they are stories I've never heard before. So I decided to take him up on it. And I enrolled in a 2 year master's program in fine arts. And this was all about creative writing. So every single day we would be reading, we would be writing, we would be workshopping our work with other people, and they would be workshopping their work with us. And it was a great opportunity for me to try different kinds of writing, short story, novel, poetry, documentary film, all of that kind of stuff. I learned so much during those 2 years. But another thing that I learned during those same 2 years, and it was just happenstance that it came together at the right time. My younger brother had bought a condo in Jaipur and had remodeled the whole thing inside and out. He wasn't actually living there, but he said to the whole family, "Hey, anytime you want to come by, you should come and live in this condo. Take a vacation here, whatever you want to do. Everything is here for you." There's even a cook, there's a housekeeper, there's all of that. So my mother said to me, I'd like to go, Alka. I'd like to renew contacts with friends and family that I haven't seen in decades. And would you chaperone me? I said, sure. So at the same time that I am taking these classes, I have all of these breaks, right? I have semester breaks, I have spring break, winter break. So I get to go take my mother there, spend more time with her and in India than I have done in 4 decades. I had not been back to India in 4 decades. And so I am going around with my mother. She wants to go to the sari shops. We do that. She wants to go to the jewelry bazaar in Jaipur along the side of the Pink City Bazaar. So we do that. We are constantly going across these produce markets where she shows me the fruits that she can't get in the United States that she loves and the vegetables and so on. I learned a lot about what my mother loved about India. And I suddenly started to realize that there was another India that I had forgotten about since the age of 9 when we first came to the United States. And that India was full of flavor and scents and color and a whole different kind of spirituality than I had come to know in the United States. So I started to write about this. And at the same time, I was getting to know stories that my mother was telling me now that she was in India. She was remembering things about her childhood. One of the things that she emphasized was that when she was 18, she knew that she would be married. She knew that somebody was going to arrange a marriage for her. And sure enough, her father called her back from college and said, we found the perfect partner for you. He is an engineer. The year is 1955, and engineers were in big demand as grooms because they were helping rebuild India's infrastructure. It was a big deal to have an engineer in the family, just like it's a big deal to have a doctor in the family today. So my grandfather's over the moon. My mother and my father meet for the first time. They're married 1 month later. And within 4 years after that, my mother has 3 kids, and her life is never her own again. She does not get to go back to college. She does not get to have a career. It just wasn't done in the 50s in her family. So uh, I grew up with a mother who had never experienced the kind of independence that she afforded me. And it really hit home when I was in India with her, how much of society's expectations she was still having to meet. She still had to maintain a certain decorum and not talk about certain things and, be mindful of what she was doing at any one time. I didn't have to do that at all. She always said to me, honey, you just do whatever you want in life. You marry whomever you want, you get a degree in whatever you want, you travel by yourself, just whatever you want to do is great. So I realized that my mother had given me the life she couldn't have. What if, as I was writing, I had invented a character who gets to do all the things my mother didn't get to do in 1955, and she looks just like my mother. So that is where Lakshmi was born. Now, Lakshmi does look like my mother. I have kind of these blue gray eyes. My mother had green gray eyes, and my brother also has green eyes. So this is the reason why Radha and Lakshmi and baby Nikki all have these kind of watercolor eyes. And I had a chance to also in the novel have Lakshmi have the opportunity to leave her marriage for whatever reason. I had to invent a reason. So yes, her husband is abusive, and it's a big reason why a woman leaves her marriage. And then she goes on to do this a life of being a henna artist, becoming an herbal healer, things that were available to her without any formal education. And she forges this life of independence. So I said to my mom, hey, this novel is for you. I'm paying tribute to you, Mom. And she's like, oh, okay, well, that's nice. Okay. I don't think that she ever thought it would become what it did become. And I graduated from the program. The Henna Artist was my thesis. But then 8 months afterward, my mother very suddenly and unexpectedly died. So she did not get to see The Henna Artist as a book. And at that point, I just thought to myself, I wrote this book for her. It doesn't make any sense to continue doing this. And besides, the economy had recovered. I had clients who were calling me back to do projects. So I just gave up on the writing altogether. One of my instructors called me and she said, Alka, what are you doing with your book? I said, nothing. I mean, my mom is gone. And she said, well, listen, we think that you might have the best opportunity to get this published of anybody in your cohort group. So why don't we work on it? I worked on it with her for about a year and a half. She sent it to her agent. Her agent called me from New York. This is Emma Sweeney. I love this book. I really want to work with you on it. And I said, oh my God, this is so great. When am I getting published? And she said, oh, you're not getting published anytime soon. You have a lot of work to do on this novel, but I'm happy to help you. And so disappointed as I was, I said, okay, so what can I do? And she said, well, first of all, I think that every other chapter is not necessary. So you need to cut out about 140 pages out of this book. Oh my God, it nearly gave me a heart attack because once you have been writing and writing and writing and revising, having somebody tell you that you have to cut a bunch of stuff out of a book is like having an arm cut off. But I said, okay, fine, I'll do that. And then she said, let's work on the beginning, let's work on the ending. And then maybe this character is not so necessary. Maybe this character is more necessary. You need to add some stuff about this character. So she's constantly doing this with me for about 3 years. At the end of 3 years, I really thought, wait, I already just spent 3 years working on this novel in my program, and then with Anita, my instructor, and now with Emma, that's like 6 years. What is it that she doesn't think is right with it, and why can't she send it off to a publisher? So I asked her that, and she said, look, Alka, it doesn't work the way that you think it works. You get one shot at this. So when you are a debut novelist and you have nobody who has ever heard of you, you've never written a chapbook, you've never written a short story, novel, nothing, they don't know who you are. They have to know that you are going to deliver a book that is just going to be a blockbuster. Because if it's not, then you don't get a second contract, you don't get a third contract, you don't get anything. And she said, I only work with really established and writers who are serious about becoming full-time authors. So I said, okay, all right. What do you want me to do next? I'm game. And she said, okay, I think that you need a professional editor now. So here are the things that I think you should think about as you talk to these people. She gave me a list. I talked to the first editor. I sent her, my novel. She looked at it and she goes, oh, okay. I love this story. I love this character of Lakshmi. Yeah, but here are 8 pages of things that I think you need to consider. Maybe you need to add, maybe you need to delete, and so on. And I, thought to myself, I'm smarter than that. And so I don't need to be following this woman's, suggestions. I think I could do it. Uh, I think this book is publishable the way that it is. I'm going to show my agent wrong. So I called another editor on the list and I sent her my whole manuscript, and she looks it over and she said to me, uh, so Alka, I love this novel. I love these characters. I think this is really fabulous. But here are 18 pages of things that I think you really need to consider. And at that point, I was so upset because I thought, hey, I don't understand. I have put heart and soul into this novel, and I have spent the last now 7 years of my life working on it. And I think that maybe this is like a racket, this whole publishing, writing business. I think that maybe I don't need to be doing this anymore. I don't need to be having people tell me, you're not ready, you're not ready, you're not ready. I have a whole profession right here. My clients are calling me back. I'm doing all this business. No, I don't need to be doing this. And I gave up completely. I never was going to continue writing. Then about a year later, I was looking for something for a client, and in my desk drawer, there was that huge, thick manuscript, 350 pages of the Henna Artist. And I thought to myself, I have spent so many years on this. If I don't do something with this novel, nobody will get to see this tribute to my mother, this alternate life I imagined for her. So, Alka, just, cool your jets. Why don't you look at all of those comments that the professional editor sent you? And let's see what we can do. It took me another year while working on the marketing stuff full time. It took me another year to go through all of those comments and to start making those revisions. I made the revisions. It sent it all back to Emma. And I said, Emma, it's been 9 years at this point that I first started working on this novel. And I really, really, really need you to send this off to some kind of publisher, because if you don't, then you are not my agent. I do not want you as my agent anymore. I was on such a high horse. Oh my God. And so Emma wrote back. She said, listen, we don't even have a contract at this point, Alka. We've never even had a contract as an agent and a writer. So why don't I send that out to you? And if you really want to, you could go anywhere else. But I have been working with you on this novel because I really believe in this story and I love this character of Lakshmi. So I said, okay. Finally, we signed the contract. She sends it off. We get a contract from HarperCollins for publishing The Henna Artist. Now I have an 18-month lag time between the time I sign the contract to the time it's going to show up on bookstores and libraries. I am now assigned to a new editor, and that is Kathy within HarperCollins. I am working with her for that first year. We get the manuscript in shape the way that she would like it, because she had a lot of comments that I needed to address as well. And then for the following 6 months, the book is sent off to the printer. It is going to be married to the book cover. It is going to go off to the distribution houses, to Amazon, to Target, to all of the different bookstores and libraries. And then it's going to show up on bookshelves. And so during that 6 months, I started working on the novel that is actually going to be the novel coming out in April, 6 Days in Bombay. But what happened is that Malik from the Henna Artist just kept telling me, you have those 140 pages that you cut out of the Henna Artist, and many of those had me in them. Half of those had me in them. So why don't you write about me? I really want you to write my story. How did I end up in the pig city? Why is it that I'm taking care of myself? Why am I on the streets? Why aren't I also, attending one of these posh boarding schools? So I start writing his story, and I'm 20 pages into it. And my agent says, let's send this off to the publisher. Publisher gets it. They go, oh, here's a second book contract. The first book is not even out yet, and they give me a second book contract. And my agent said, see, this is exactly what we were hoping for. So I start working on the Secret Keeper of Jaipur. It, just flows really easily from my pen. And then the release date for the Henna Artist is coming up. And my release date is March the 10th, 2020. A less auspicious date could not have been planned, because the day after that, the World Health Organization said, hey, everybody, why don't you put some masks on? Why don't you shelter in place? We have a huge global pandemic on our hands. So if any of you had planned to go out to Alka's book launches, stop right there because she's not going to have a book launch ever. And we need for you all to either get your books online, audiobooks and ebooks, but you're not going to be going and getting books that you can actually carry home or that are going to be delivered to you. Amazon, for a while, was shipping out physical copies of books until we all freaked out about paper bags and, how COVID was going to be transmitted. So they stopped doing that. But I had a little meltdown. Of course I did. After 10 years of working on a novel, you're about to have a meltdown if nobody can talk to you about it. And so I decided to reach out to book clubs online. And I just said, please, everybody, I have been working on this book. In fact, I've been telling you on social media about the food that I include in the book, about the saris, about my mother's jewelry, about traditions in India that I include in my book. Would you please talk to me? Would you please tell me if you have a book club? I don't care if you have 3 people, 6 people, 30 people. Please talk to me because I really need to talk to somebody about this book. And people started responding. And so to date, I have done almost 1,000 book clubs on Zoom. I've done it in person. I've done it as ancillaries to larger festivals, book festivals that I was doing. It's been a fabulous experience. Um, and I think that book clubs really saved me. Book clubs saved me. I cannot believe where I would have been without book clubs because they believed in the book. They told everybody about the book. And then we get the call from Reese Witherspoon saying, I love this book. I really want to talk to people about it. And that just, blew everything out of the water because Reese Witherspoon, a phenomenal actress, but also an advocate for women and female authors. And she said, I could use my influence to get women the kind of recognition and the advances that male authors generally get. How can I do that? Well, I'll create a platform called Reese's Book Club, and I will only promote female authors. And so I became one of her 12 authors in the year 2020. So suddenly, the movie companies start calling and they're like, oh my gosh, we want to produce the Henna Artist. What do you want, Alka? Do you want a movie or do you want a TV series? I said, hands down, I want a TV series. I love to binge, binge, binge when I'm watching on streaming platforms, and I want a bingeable show. So they said, okay. So anyway, that is off in a whole separate land. I have nothing to do with it. I don't know anything about the screen production process. Okay, so please don't ask me. And also don't send me any actors and actresses that you absolutely love because I will never get a chance to weigh in on them. Uh, and then I finally went on the road again with the Secret Keeper of Jaipur and the Henna Artist when the world opened up and I was able to go and talk about both of those books. And then my agent said, "What else do you have?" I said, "Well, I've been thinking about writing another book, but this one would be about Radha. I've done one for Lakshmi, I've done one for Malik, but I want to know how Radha also grows into a young woman and maybe start to appreciate more what Lakshmi did for her and how difficult it was for Lakshmi to mother her when Lakshmi herself is not a mother." And so I start to explore that, and that becomes A Perfumist of Paris, which was really fun to write because I knew nothing about perfume, but Radha knows everything about perfume when she decides to study the fragrance industry and work in a fragrance lab. And so I have to go to New York City and work at finding the fragrance houses. I get to visit perfume labs. I get to talk to master perfumers. And then they all said, hey, you need to go to Paris and talk to those folks. So I go to Paris and do exactly the same thing, talk to a lot of master perfumers there. I drop down to the southeastern part of France where perfume is bottled and it's compounded. And all throughout, I'm thinking, this is what Radha would do. This is Radha's life. I am following in her footsteps. So then I start, coming back home, and people go, wait a minute. You need to go talk to this guy up in Lisbon, because he was in the fragrance industry in Paris in the 1970s, which is what you're writing about. So I go to meet Yves de Chiry, in Lisbon, and he is like 87, 89 years old. I don't know. But he's a lovely gentleman, and he spends 4 hours over lunch telling me all about what it was like in the perfume industry in the 1970s in Paris. Tells me a lot of fun anecdotes which made their way into The Perfumist of Paris. And also, it tells me about some of the women who worked in the industry at that time, whom one of whom became the stand-in for Radha's boss, Delphine, and she is modeled after Sophia Grossman, a real life perfumer who smoked like a chimney. And I said to Eve, I go, how can a woman who smokes like a chimney be a master perfumer? Those people have to memorize 2 to 3,000 scents in their nose. Wouldn't it destroy your sense of smell? And he said, oh, no, because first of all, we were all smoking in the 1970s, but also because she is just a phenomenal perfumer who can create all the scents and formulas in her head. She never has to smell a vial of perfume. So Delphine in The Perfumist of Paris is also a chain smoker and really mothers Radha in a way that Radha needs to be mothered in the profession. Anyway, so that novel also gave me a chance to explore what would happen if Radha's son, the one that she had to give up for adoption in the Henna Artist, what would happen if she met with him again? And I had to speak this time to adoption experts. We don't have any adoptions in our family, so I had to really learn about what that's like and what it's like for adoptive parents and adopted children and all of these people when they finally have a chance to meet, or what if they decide they never want a chance to meet? So all of that made its way into the book, which was really fun. And now, this year, we are introducing 6 Days in Bombay. Wait, here. 6 days in Bombay. My mirror, my image is mirrored around, so like I don't exactly know what I'm pointing to. But anyway, 6 Days in Bombay is this is the book that I started before I started writing Malik's book. And this book is inspired by Amrita Sher-Gill, who was a half Indian, half Hungarian painter in the 1920s, 30s, and she died in 1941 at the age of 29, very mysteriously. I think had she not died, she would be a household name today in the way that Frida Kahlo is a household name, in the way that Georgia O'Keeffe is a household name, because these are formidable women. They were painting at a time when women were not being recognized for their art. Amrita was recognized for her art. She was the youngest member of the Paris Salon when she was only 16 years old. And she studied in Paris. She studied all over Europe because of her mother taking her around to all these different painting studios. But she found her best work was taking place in India. And that is where she lived and did so much of her work and died. Now, the mystery surrounding her death was very intriguing to me. I wanted to know exactly what had happened. I could not find in any of the research exactly how she had died. There are speculation, but nothing concrete. And I thought, well, I'd like to write a story not only about this artist's life and work, because she was so flamboyant, she was so free-spirited in a way that I can't be. I mean, it takes chutzpah for a woman to be that out there in the 20s and 30s and 40s. And I was so intrigued by that. Uh, but I also wanted to explore through the eyes of another person how she might have died. So that becomes the night nurse who is taking care of a painter named Mira Novak, who comes into the hospital in Bombay and dies 6 days later under mysterious circumstances. The nurse is blamed, and but not before she has bequeathed 4 paintings by this famous painter, patient of hers. And she needs to go explore through Europe to find these former lovers and friends of the painter and deliver these paintings to them. That's her charter, and she goes about to do that. And in the process, really comes to terms with her own identity, which is half Indian and half British. So anyway, 6 Days in Bombay, I think, is a really sweeping adventure tale. It's the first standalone novel I've done, and I think it's going to be really fun for people to actually travel through the book. You're going to get to go to Bombay, Istanbul, Prague, Paris, Florence, and London, and then back to Bombay. It's a whirlwind that you will actually be experiencing, and I hope you're going to love it and also find out more about this phenomenal painter that I hope the world will make a household name someday. All right, so I think that is the conclusion of my little spiel, Mina. If you would, if you would like to ask me questions, or if anybody would like to ask me questions, that would be lovely.
I have plenty of questions, and we have some in the Q&A already. So I just want to remind everybody to put your questions in the Q&A. I just opened up the chat so you can chat with each other about how awesome Alka is. But if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A because it's easier for me to keep a track of. Alka, that was the most interesting story. I can't believe you condensed, I don't know, 15 years of your life in, in 30 minutes. But I wanted to, my first question to you really is about being Indian and doing this book for your mother because you didn't grow up there. So like, what made you decide, except for that you wanted to honor your mother, that when you were going to write a book, it was going to be about or set in India?
I think a couple of reasons why. One of them was that, my husband is not Indian, and he had always been asking me stories, like, where did you go to school? What was that like? What kind of home situation did you have? Did you go to school with your brothers? What did you guys do after school? Things like that. And so as I was telling him the stories, he said, those are stories I hadn't heard before. And indeed, at the time that we were married 30 years ago, there wasn't a lot of literature, fictional literature, historical fiction literature by Indian authors. So he found those fascinating. And I thought, oh, well, maybe if he would find, I just thought of them as normal, but maybe if he would find them fascinating, maybe other people would too. So that was one reason. Another was that as I was in India with my mother, I was so inspired by the Indian culture. I was so inspired by the color and the vibrancy and, the juxtaposition of being in an air-conditioned car at the same time that a cow is crossing the street, at the same time that a woman is threading marigolds underneath the tree, to your right. Uh, I loved the juxtaposition of all of that. There are so many um, things that you see in just 2 blocks of an Indian city that you will never see anywhere else.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to write about that. I was so impressed with my birth culture, which I had ignored for so many years. When we came to the United States when I was 9, everybody would ask us, where are you from and what are you? And we were in Ames, Iowa in 1967, and a lot of people there had never seen anybody from India before. And so when we would tell them we were Indian, they would say, what tribe? Because what they were used to, the indigenous people. And then they would not want to sit next to me on the bus or even in the lunchroom because I smell bad, because I smell like curry, right? We were still eating curry and nobody had smelled that smell before. Um, it was one question after another about poverty in India, about the cows running on the streets. I was only a kid. I did not know how to answer those questions. And what I took away was that everybody thought of India as this really backward place. It was always called underdeveloped. It was always known as something that was dirty, overpopulated, da 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 da. And so I just thought, I don't want to be Indian. I want to be American. I'm just going to be American. Like, don't even ask me about India. And luckily, I have blue eyes, which kind of lets me get away with being Brazilian or Italian or, anything else. And so I think just having disavowed that portion of my heritage, my birthright, was really an awful thing that I did to myself. I didn't have any option, but I think that in rediscovering India, I was like, oh my God, I've been missing out for decades on this. And so, yeah, I did want to write about, I think, something that I think makes me special, that makes India special, that talks about India's contributions to the world, the herbs, the food, the spices that go in the food, the fragrances that go into anything that you and I put in our homes or on our bodies. That is all coming from the Indian subcontinent. And the silks and the muslins and oh my God, it's just, when I started looking at everything that India has contributed to the world, it just made me embarrassed and ashamed of having discounted that country for so long. So yeah, I wanted to write about it.
And I don't think your experience is all that different from so many other people, not just of Indian background, but of any background that wants to assimilate and then realize what they're missing out on. But I went, before I get to questions for everybody, one of the things I wanted to say about your books is that I generally read books very quickly because I want to get through the plot. And I actually read your books incredibly slowly because your words, the way that you put your words together were so like every sentence felt really like meaningful. So I didn't want to miss any of it. So I just really, I just thank you because I feel like there's not enough books like this out there that are well written, that are wonderful stories, and that break those stereotypes that people have had.
Oh, thank you, Mina. That means a lot. That means a lot. That's really lovely. You know, I had the most wonderful letter today from a seaman on a cruise. He is Peruvian on a cruise ship, and he said that you know, they had about a month when the ship was in dry dock. It was getting cleaned or whatever, and so you know, he went into the library for the patrons and he found the Henna Artist and he put it away for about a year. Then finally, he took it out recently and he read it cover to cover. And he said, "Thank you so much for getting me out of my loneliness."
Oh.
Wow. And so, you know, I understood that what he's saying is that oftentimes when we're away from home or when we come from another culture, there is a kind of loneliness from not being able to interact the same way with people, with family, with food, with a sense and the environment. And he said that the henna artist brought him back to all of that. And I said, "Oh my God, this is, you know, that's a really lovely comment, just as
Mhm.
yours is, Mina. Thank you."
Yeah, absolutely. It's true too. Like I remember the first time I went back to India as an adult and I was like, oh my gosh, I fit in. I feel like everybody looks like me. Everybody, it was amazing. And I don't want to take too much time away from the questions because we have a bunch. So Lillian asks, the first book especially had so much natural healing knowledge in it, herbal medicine, maybe some Ayurveda. Was all this knowledge yours already, or where did you learn it from? Maybe from your mother, or did you have to do some extra research? And she said it was very impressive.
One of the things that I realized is that the things that we did in our home that my mother and father just did naturally were handed down recipes from forever. Um,
Mhm.
and I realized going back to India that every household had recipes and homegrown remedies that they followed. So, for example, my mother, if we were ever hurt, she made a poultice out of coconut oil and haldi, which is turmeric
Mhm.
because turmeric is anti-inflammatory. So you put it right over a burn or a scrape and you know you'll be well in no time. No neosporin required. Um, and my father would always make a chach, you know, which is buttermilk. You kind of
Mhm.
make it a little frothy, and then you put some black pepper and salt in there, and you drink it. It's great for indigestion. And so some of this I already knew, but every time we would go to India, I would question other people. Hey, what are your homegrown recipes? What do you guys do? And then, of course, I did a lot of research on different ways that people solve their health issues. So it was lovely to be able to put all of that in the book. And I think especially now when we're all looking for ways that we can become healthier without having to take a lot of Western medicine. Although in the book, I do have to say, and I think in all of my books, I do advocate for a combination of Western and Eastern medicine. I think all of it is good, right? All of it is necessary, and each of those things have their benefits.
You know that commercial for Frank's hot sauce where he says, "I put this crap on everything." That's how my mother thought about Haldi. I put that stuff on everything. We were very healthy children. So that's wonderful. And it's nice to know too that there's some reality, some basis in reality. It wasn't just old wives' tales that you were using.
No,
Um,
not at all. Oh, and you know, I should tell you also, my dad is 93 years old. He's very healthy, very healthy. I mean, he still drives. I wish he wouldn't, but he does drive. And he drinks his hot milk with turmeric every single night. He puts a little Splenda in it now, but yeah, he drinks that every night. And I firmly believe that that is one of the reasons why he is so healthy.
Hmm. Yeah, I think so. I can certainly talk to my about my family that way as well. Jen says, I love your books and meeting you in Pueblo tops my 2024 experiences.
Oh, thank you,
Mhm.
Jen.
My my question is about Hari. What made you soften Hari's heart and pick up the torch of healing practices and supported women and their needs? Was this something that you witnessed, knowing the gender role culture? I was pleasantly surprised by the pivot of his character.
Okay, so this is one of the things I learned being an author. When I originally submitted the manuscript over to Kathy, which is my editor at HarperCollins, she said, Alka, I think all of your characters are very three-dimensional. I like the fact that they have good in them and bad in them. The only person who doesn't meet that is Hari. He's just mean through and through. He's always bad. He's beating up on Lakshmi, and then he shows up in Jaipur and he's, trying to beat her up again. He's asking for money and all of this. She said, can you find some humanity in him? Because readers are smart. They're going to be able to see that you didn't like him. I said, yeah, I don't like him. She said, they're going to be able to see that, spot that right away. And they're going to know that you did not work on his character as much as you worked on the other characters. So I thought, all right, okay, what else can I do? And I just started asking him questions, why are you this way? What made you this way? What was your childhood like? And he started to answer my questions because after you've been living with characters for a really long time, they do start talking to you and they become their own people somewhere in the back of your mind. They're always existing and they're doing their own thing. They're having a party back there. And so he said, yeah, I was the only son. I am the only child. Of course, everything I did, according to my parents, was just God's gift to the world. And so when I wanted to bed Lakshmi, she should have been willing because everybody was always willing to do my bidding. And she didn't want to. And then I found out that the gossip beaters are talking behind my back about how I'm not able to get my own wife pregnant. And then I see that she is taking the contraceptive tea to keep herself from getting pregnant, which she didn't tell me about. And so, yeah, I did what I really felt I had the right to do, which is to tame my own wife. And of course, Lakshmi wasn't putting up with that. So she leaves. And then he realizes, oh my goodness, she's gone. My mother still needs help with people going down to the riverbank to get a plant, or she needs somebody to mix up a poultice for her, and so on. And so, he said, my mother needed my help. And so I started helping her. And then pretty soon I took over the whole practice. And then I really started to understand that these women had nobody to go to. They had all these ailments and nobody was tending to them except for a woman, my mother, who was very gentle with them and could understand what they were going through. So he became that person who was also gentle and found his humanity. And then when he shows up in Jaipur, Lakshmi doesn't know that he's found his humanity, but we know that he has. So that is how Hari's personality changed, or how he changed throughout the novel. And it made the novel so much better because at the end of the novel, when I had first submitted it to Kathy, Lakshmi was leaving on the train to go up to Shimla, but Samir was the one waiting to say goodbye to her. He's the one who reaches his hand in through the train window. He has that pocket watch that he had gifted to her and that she had left on the countertop of her house. He is putting that pocket watch through the window to give it back to her before the train takes off. And I just thought to myself, once I had finished Hari's trajectory, I thought, oh, okay, it cannot be Samir saying goodbye to her at that platform. That's ridiculous. It has to be Hari because she and Hari need to finally just say to one another, it didn't work for us, but I wish you well. And I hope that the rest of your life is better than the one that we had together. And I think that was a far better ending.
Mhm. It's amazing how you've turned it and churned it and churned it until it became what it is. It's just amazing to me. And as you said, it was a 10-year journey, and then more thinking after that.
Yeah.
And people are saying that they love the topic, the word gossip eaters, which I think is a hoot.
Oh, yeah, that was so much fun to make up. All of a sudden, one day I thought to myself, hey, these guys are eating rumors day and night. So why can't I just call them gossip eaters?
I love it. Nishi asks, how can I get your books autographed? I want to remind people that you can buy signed books by Alka from Aesop's Fable, and I will put a link to that in the email that will be going out after this program. Um, Somebody asked, can you discuss your writing process? Are you a pantser or a plotter?
I'm a pantser. I'm not I'm not a good plotter. You know, all those years ago when I was in advertising, I just had to work my way through the creative process. I would like go through 500 ideas before I came up with one that I wanted to present to the client or came up with a couple. I was not one of those people who could systematically come up with ideas. And I think I do the same thing still today. I'm constantly churning ideas in my head, even if I'm not physically writing them on a piece of paper or on my laptop. I am constantly like, as I'm walking, as I'm driving, as I'm, swimming, I am constantly thinking about the characters and moving a scene forward and trying to figure out, oh, no, I don't think that person should be saying that. I think this person could be saying that instead. Or, oh, I don't think those two people need to be in the room. I think this other third person needs to come into the room and say something. So these are always going through my head. And then once I feel like I've got it pretty solidified for a scene, that's when I write it down. That's the only time that I write it down. I don't write every day. I know a lot of authors who, in my MFA program, they said develop a practice where you write every single day. I don't write every day. I may write one day, I may write for 4 hours. The next 4 days, I don't write at all because, I think that you're constantly writing. It doesn't have to be the act of doing this. It's always in my head. So
Mhm.
maybe I do write every day. I just write it in my head.
Maybe, but I was going to say one of the things I read about you was the reason you did the 50 over 50 was that your first book came out when you were 52 and
62.
62. Oh, that's right. Oh, is that right? Okay,
Yeah.
I believe you. You know. Um,
Yes, this year, let's see, in a couple of months, yeah, I'll be 67. Yeah.
you've done a lot in that much time, but accomplished so much. But for me, like I can't remember stuff. So as you're walking and all these things come out in your head, like how do you keep them from like falling out of your ears as you get home?
Well, I think it's because these characters are just living in me. So it's not about to leave me, Like today, okay, so I'm writing the fifth book now, like in my head and in, on the computer and stuff and on my phone. I often make a
Mm.
lot of
Yeah.
notes on my phone as I think of them. Um, oh, there's my dog. As I'm doing that, I just worked something out. I thought, oh, wait a second. She should be doing it this way, not that way. And now it is so strong in my head that I have to write it down and I'm not going to forget it. There are certain things that come to you and you just know they're the right thing to do in a particular scene or in a piece of dialogue, and you will not forget them because they are central to the story.
Mhm. That's really interesting in terms of what is important to us. Because, like, I will forget to wash the dishes, but I will totally remember to email you later today.
Yes, that's exactly, yes. We know, our brains know what is important to remember. Yeah.
That's so funny. Okay, so we have a few more questions. We might go a little bit over 8 if that's
Yeah,
okay with you.
don't
Okay.
worry.
So Avika asks, and I hope I'm saying that correctly, do you think that Nikki could get his own book at some point? Because the end of the trilogy left me wanting to see him growing into an adult and having his own adventure. You did this with Malik. Could you do it with Nikki?
Yeah, I get that question so often. People love Nikki. And also, what's interesting is, and I do think that I'm going to write this book, at the end of The Perfumist of Paris, we're in the year 1974, and we have a whole new generation of kids. We have Radha's kids, we have Malik's kids, and Sheila's kids, and we have Nikki. So I think that there is a whole generation of people that I would write a story about. And I might even do it so that from chapter to chapter, we are from the point of view of one of them. So I think that could be really, really interesting.
You do have a new newsletter out. I think short stories in the newsletter might be a thing.
Ooh. Oh, that's, sort of like how Dickens used to serialize his books. Yes, what a great idea. Okay.
You heard it here first, people.
Readers give me some of the best ideas, and they also give me insights into the book that I didn't even have. They
Mhm.
will sometimes be so prescient. Oh, the reason that this happened is because blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, yes, that makes a lot more sense than what I was thinking.
But isn't that because as readers, and we'll get to more questions in a second, isn't that because more readers take their own life into the book that they're reading? So they read it from their own perspective.
Yeah. 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 I didn't think about that. Yeah. Just like when I'm reading a book, I'm going to take my point of view into account, in talking about a certain character. Yeah. 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 I think so.
Um, it's really quickly, a couple of people want to know if you're from Rajasthan, if not, which part of India,
Yes.
and how did you make such incredible descriptions of the place, especially if you since you didn't grow up there.
Okay, so I am born in Jodhpur. My brothers and I were all born in Jodhpur. After that, we moved to Banswara. We lived in Jaipur. We lived in Bikaner. We lived 1 year up in Chandigarh. And this is all before I was 9 years old. So we moved a lot. So I know a lot of different cities. Like I have memories of a lot of different cities.
Mhm.
But also I'm an artist. And so I observe things very clearly. I think, Mina, before we got everybody on board here, you and I were talking about Jhumpa Lahiri, and you said that she's very quiet. She's an observer. Well, you would not believe how quiet I was as a kid. I was always watching people to the point where people would say to me, "Hey, say something, participate." You're just watching people. You're freaking us out. But I am an observer and I do watch people to see what they're saying versus what I think they're saying, versus what I think they're trying to say. I watch their expressions to see if the expression is saying what's coming out of their mouth. I just do this very naturally. I look at how people are wearing clothes. I look at the colors. I am just observant, and I think that's why I'm able to create some of that sensorial environment that everybody finds as if, it makes them feel as if they are in the story.
Mhm.
And I love books. I love reading books where I feel like I'm in the story, like I am walking alongside the character. And so I wanted to create that same experience for a reader too.
Mhm. Well, in the chat for anybody who's been to India, they've all said it was so real to them, the way that you described the settings. And I would say the same for myself. I have been to Jaipur and Udaipur, and you just brought it alive. So Jill asked, after the Henna Artist success, how did your agent, editors, and producers change their input and oversight to your work, or did they?
Oh, what an interesting question. Um, I think they try to give you a lot more leeway. They're not as picky about every single sentence but were they picky before? No, they kind of weren't.
You did say 18 pages of edits.
Oh, yes, yeah. Now the developmental editors, those guys that you hire, the professional editors, yeah, they always give you a whole lot of pages of, you might want to consider this and that. What they give you, and this has remained consistent, what they will give you is they'll give you a summary of what they thought of the story, where they thought the story could be stronger, where they thought that you could maybe think about a different direction. So they'll give you like 3 to 4 pages of a summary. Then they give you page after page after page of the real specifics behind that summary. So yeah, that has pretty much stayed consistent. And thank God for professional editors, because you can only revise your own work so often before you just run out of steam. You need somebody else to look at it and go with a fresh eye and go, okay, this doesn't track here. Or this character, we just lose track of them in chapter 5. Why? Why have you suddenly abandoned them?
Mhm.
Or they'll say something like, this particular storyline for this character would be a lot stronger if you didn't kill them. So yeah, in 6 Days in Bombay, I had three characters that I had conveniently killed off because I didn't want them in the story any longer. Like I didn't need them in the story any longer. And I remember when my editor said, could you just undead some of these people because it's beginning to look like it's very convenient for you to kill them. So yeah,
Who
good
is it?
editor. Yeah, a good editor is worth whatever they charge. They really are very, very good.
You're like the who is that woman? Cabot Cove. I wouldn't want to
Oh
live in
yeah,
Cabot Cove.
Jessica Fletcher.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to live there because, I'm gonna die, but like in your books.
Murder She Wrote. Yes, she was one of my favorite characters. I love that Jessica Fletcher
I do
character.
too. Obviously, I'm, quoting her so many years later. So Vanessa asks and says, I was riveted and horrified by the Royal Palace shoddy building. Was that based on something that actually happened?
No.
But it could.
No, but keep in mind, my dad is a civil engineer, right?
Mhm.
And so one time when I was in Jaipur, I went to Rajmandar, which is where, we used to go to movies at Rajmandar Cinema, which is a huge 1,000-person cinema. And it's described exactly the way that you see it in the book and The Secret Keeper of Jaipur. And it just occurred to me, I go, what would happen if something like that collapsed? So I asked my dad. So he told me all about the engineering of how those things are made and what would happen if it collapsed and who would pay for it. And the Maharajas would definitely have been involved in the 1950s and 60s in that because they were investing in infrastructure. That was one of the ways that they could invest their money and make more money in the bargain. So dad was oftentimes in meetings with Maharajas, the Maharaja of Bikaner, the Maharaja of Jaipur, because he was building roads and dams and bridges in Rajasthan. And so these were people who were involved. So that's how I got all of that background.
That's amazing. And I mean, and it's interesting too, because you had said at the beginning that your mother, arranged marriage. I mean, he's an engineer. And so it seems like they were able to find a good place with each other, even though your mother wasn't able to do the things that she maybe had dreamed of.
Yeah, I think so many of the couples of that era, they didn't have a choice. And so they had to make it work, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I think arranged marriages have as much of a chance of success as love marriages do. And
Mhm.
in India, that's what the other marriage is called, is a love marriage. So I think in this country, what do we have, like a 50% divorce rate? And I do know that in India, now that young women are, they have degrees and they are able to get great jobs and they are making a good income, contributing to the household income, divorce rates are climbing
Mhm.
because women are saying, hey, you know what? You know that arranged marriage or even that love match that I made, maybe it's not serving me anymore.
Mhm.
And so I need to, get out of it. And so mm, I think that I think that either kind of marriage has as much of a chance of success as the other.
Mhm. Just as an aside, when my dad married my mother, my grandfather said to him, "Put on your good suit. We're going out." He came, he got married that day.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah. Do you remember that's how it used to happen?
Yeah.
My parents had never spoken word one to one another until they were on the mandap getting married.
Right.
That was the first time they spoke to one another.
Yeah. I somebody asked, and you don't have to answer this. How did you meet your husband?
Oh, so I met Brad through a friend of ours, and she said, I think there's this friend of mine. I just think you would just get along so well with him, and da da da. And I had been in another relationship, and I was getting out of that relationship, and so she said, I never wanted to mention it before because you were already, with someone else. But I think you guys would get along really well. And she made incidents happen where we would all be together. And sure enough, I loved his sense of humor. I loved Brad's. Oh, here's the other thing. Brad is a writer. And that is another thing that she knew I loved that I liked writers, that I was very admiring of writers and how they come up with all these stories out of nothing and then make a whole, book out of them. And so Brad was a writer. He had graduated from the Stanford writing program. He was teaching at Stanford. And I was just so like taken with that, right? I never in those years, I never ever thought that it was because I may end up writing someday. I was just like, oh my God, somebody who can write. Oh.
Awesome.
And so I
It's
think,
like when I met my husband, I was like, oh, somebody who can cook.
oh, if only I had that also. That would be heaven.
That's awesome. So, okay, so I just want to go through, we just about out of time, and I wanted to say a couple of comments that are here. Nishi says, Indians contributed so much to the fields of science, medicine, and mathematics, and now yoga is now everywhere. We're talking about the medicinal things. Linda says that she loved the Henna Artist. She leads discussions about your books. She led one last month at their book club at Unlikely Story, which is in Plainville, Massachusetts. And one of the recurring comments was all the wonderful folk remedies. Several of the group planned on reading the entire trilogy. Shanta asks, are you doing a book tour for 6 days? Because I'd like you to come to Arizona.
Oh, listen, anybody who wants me to come out and talk about 6 days, we are planning that book tour right now. So the book comes out April 15th, and I am boom, 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 boom. I am, going for the next 2, 3 months. I will be in lots of different places. If you would like to invite me out somewhere, make sure that you coordinate it with a library like Mina's. And because libraries can always get an independent bookstore to come out and sell the books to everybody who comes, which would be fabulous. And also try to see if there's a book festival that happens in your city. And if there's a book festival, they like to have authors come and talk. So suggest me as an author who could come and talk about anything. I'll talk about writing. I'll talk about the craft of sensory writing. I'll talk about, how an older person like me probably has more experience that they can put into a book about love and loss and grief than maybe, than maybe you didn't think was possible. And I can't believe, Mina, how many women have come up to me at the end of some of my talks and said, I didn't know that at my age, I'm 50 or I'm 60 or I'm 70, that I could actually start a new career like you have. And I think maybe I can now. So it's good to be able to give people that kind of inspiration. And I love doing it.
Mhm.
And if you want me to join your book club, it's always my email address. It's alka at, and then my full name, alkajoshi.com. Just write to me and say, I need you to zoom in with my book club.
That's amazing. Well, I'm putting in a plug for you to visit Ashland, Massachusetts on your next book tour. So I'm just putting it out there right now. Again, you heard that first, everybody. So Marian asks a question, which I think is funny. I'm new to your books. Which ones would you suggest I start with? I know you can sort of do them as standalones, but I read everything in order. Would you suggest the same?
Yeah. Then in that case, I would start with the Henna Artist, go to the Secret Keeper of Jaipur, and end with the Perfumist of Paris. Yeah, I would do that. Now, 6 Days in Bombay is a standalone, so it doesn't have a sequel attached to it. So you could read that one all by itself.
Okay. I have a request for you to go to Cleveland as well. And Margaret, last question I'm going to ask you is, who do you enjoy reading?
Oh gosh, there's so many authors I enjoy reading. For years, I have been telling people that Jane Eyre is one of my favorite books. It's because I love the character of Jane. I like the fact that, in the beginning of the book, she's only 9 or 10 years old, but she has such a sense of herself and her place in the world that she deserves better than the aunt who is taking care of her is giving her. And so for years I did that. Recently, I said to my husband, "Hey, let's read Jane Eyre aloud." I always loved that book. Well, we're reading it, and I got to tell you, it kind of, now that I am looking at everything with an editor's eye, I'm like, ooh, you know what? This book could have been like 100 pages shorter. She just goes on and on and on about all kinds of things. But I think back in the 1800s when it was written, that was the thing. You sort of went on and on and on. It was a little verbose. Um, but yeah, so I like the classics like that. I also like Rabindranath Tagore. The short stories are really amazing because I think he just really understood women and he knew how to write about women, uh which really interesting for that time period, right?
Mhm.
And I think his wife was only 13 when they were married, and he made sure that she got an education. She was illiterate when they were betrothed.
You
Big props.
you had a quote from him in the Henna Artist that was first thing, and I was like, yes.
Yeah, yeah. The traveler has to walk through, I think, many doors to find the inner person within, so,
Mhm,
the inner shrine.
mhm,
And I think this is so true. We all have to experience so much of life before we figure out who we are and what is important to us. I was just wearing this sweatshirt earlier today, and it says, "Know you matter." Know that you matter.
mhm,
And I think that it was hard for me in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. I don't think I understood that I mattered just on my own inside, that inside I had everything I needed, and that I could be important to myself.
mhm,
That I didn't have to keep doing all the time for other people in order to be important and to matter at
mhm.
all.
And that certainly comes through in your books as your characters develop their own self-confidence and to walk away from hardships and create their own reality. I think that's an amazing thing that you've turned around in your stories and in your characters. Um, and I have to say, one last thing before we go is I can't imagine you in a sweatshirt because all of your pictures are like gorgeous, like the hair, the glasses, the outfits. And I was like, what am I gonna wear? I was like, I don't care. Nobody's gonna notice me.
My mom would be so pleased to hear you say that because she was always trying to get me to wear makeup, which I never used to wear, all of the jewelry. And I always loved jewelry, but I would like, I don't know why, I just wouldn't wear all of it all at once. And I just think she is here all the time. She's not with us physically, but I think she is always here and she's always looking. And I really hope she's proud of me.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna make me cry because I can't imagine her not being proud of you. All right, on that note, where we started with your mother, because the other thing is that Elka says she looks just like her mother, so her mother must have been gorgeous. I thank you for being here with us tonight. You have made an impact on so many people with this conversation, and we just love, 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 love your books.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, have a wonderful night, Alka, and we look forward to 6 days in Bombay. And you'll be
Yes.
getting that invitation from Ashlyn. And your makeup, you still look gorgeous, even with your makeup running. It's not fair.
Okay. Bye.
Everybody.
Bye.